I'm joined here by my colleague, Kris Campbell. Hi, Kris. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. These monthly please welcomes roll around so quickly. Here we are again, and it is the middle of June, almost the middle of June.
Yeah, and it's funny how I'm starting to look forward to them more than ever. Like they're just getting more and more fun.
Yeah, I agree. So, for those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, landing here, what is this? What is this that I have landed on? We'll tell you a little bit about this virtual event series brought to you by Heroic Productions. First of all, Heroic is an event production company. We are headquartered here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but our work takes us all over the world, producing events in all shapes and sizes for corporations and associations. Corporate event marketing has never been more important than it is today. So you can imagine our teams are quite busy right now, working with corporate leaders to create really impactful ways of bringing people together. That's what event marketing is all about. So we created Please Welcome in 2022, and we created it as an in-studio event. Kris is going to talk a little bit more about why we created it, but it was received so well, and we decided, well, we don't want to just do this quarterly. We want to do this monthly because there are so many amazing speakers and entertainers out there that we want to highlight. And so this really focuses on finding the right talent for your stage. That is the focus of Please Welcome. Kris, why don't you tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, we actually have several goals behind this fun thing we're doing. Education. I think that bringing our clients and our friends, everybody who's tuning in, great information and ideas they can use is a big part of this. It's just kind of a bonus. We have fun, always important.
Yeah.
And we hear from amazing speakers, as you mentioned. And we do
Yeah.
try to focus on those people that we really believe in, who have not only relevant, but refreshed current information, often very compelling, like the information we're going to get today. And, one of them might be perfect for your next event. I particularly like this format, both this virtual format and in the studio, because we get to see people outside of their formal keynote. Even the audience gets to ask questions. You'll get to see us in conversation. So you get to know a little bit about the person, which for me, when I was a buyer, and even when I'm the person sourcing for my clients, I like to know more than just what's in the demo video, what's on their website. So sometimes I get caught up in the conversation. Kitty knows this, that I forget to mention you can actually book these people we're bringing to you.
Exactly.
And so we're going to say that up front today.
Yeah.
It's important, but
we want
to welcome today's guest, George Campbell. I think he's going to magically appear. And there he is.
Here comes George. Hi, George. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Hi, Kitty. Hi, Kris.
Hi. I'm going to introduce you while you sit there and listen to me do it. And then we're going to have a few questions from you before we ask you to kind of give us a lay of the land on this topic you're going to talk about today.
And Kris, let me just say one thing, because I should have said this right at the very top. Welcome to everyone who is tuning in with us live today. You will be able to watch this in replay mode as well. So if you can't stay with us for the full 45 minutes or an hour, I'm not sure how long we're going to go today.
We never know.
We never know. If you can't stay for the whole program, then you can watch it in replay. So share. And also, if you're here with us, drop a comment. Let us know that you're here. Let us know where you're tuning in from. And if you have questions for George as we go through, or questions for us, just drop them there and we'll try to pick those up as we can.
Yeah. And if that doesn't happen, send us an email. Give me a call, whatever you want to do. It's all good. So George Campbell is a Hall of Fame speaker, published author, and in his rebellious youth, an award-winning stand-up comic. His work on countless corporate stages brought him to the attention of shows like 60 Minutes. He was also in the LA Times, and more embarrassingly, the game show To Tell the Truth. That's a story we want to hear. And then he stumbled across a question so compelling that it changed the direction of his career and life. How is it possible for smart, capable people to be completely aware of a few simple actions that, if done consistently, would result in tremendous positive changes, and yet be unable to generate that ongoing behavior? Consistency chain is the answer to that question. More importantly, it's a prescription for overcoming that challenge. George integrates his deep dive into the neuroscience of historical basis of the problem with real world examples to produce an easy to understand, easy to follow solution. We're going to explore this topic with you today, George. First, I just want to say, everybody understands how important consistency is. I mean, the concept seems so simple. And of course, our big question is, then why aren't we all better at it? Mm-hmm. I thought about this morning, and I thought, as someone who resources and book speakers, I know I'm always digging for the right thing for our clients. This fascinates me, and it fascinates me because I've never heard a single speaker talk about this subject in any other way than be consistent, or, as a sidebar, consistency is important. I've never heard a single speaker talk about the how behind this, or even why it's so hard for us. So I'm going to ask you, George, this is something we haven't really quite done this way before, but I think this is such an important subject. We're going to give you a few minutes to sort of frame this up for us. And then Kitty and I will be back, I can promise you, with some questions, and maybe some from our audience as well.
Well, and it's funny that you kind of framed it this way, that people say the importance of consistency. There was a Steve Martin back in the day when he did stand-up. He had a bit that I've never forgotten. He talked about Steve Martin's method for becoming a millionaire. And step one to becoming a millionaire was get $1 million. Step two, and I was always like, wait, can we go back to step one? Because I feel like that's where I'm missing the boat on this. And that's always kind of the way consistency's been talked about, the importance of consistency. How do you become consistent? Step one, be consistent. Step two. And so I started to explore this. And I think in the beginning, I wanted to explore it on a personal level, because this has been a struggle for me. And why is it such a struggle? I know it's important. What is the reason why I have such a challenge with this? And so as I began doing the research on this, I kind of pulled together 3 different pieces of a puzzle that no one has ever connected together, nor would it be likely that they would, because I pulled together an 18th century Italian social scientist, a monster made out of marshmallows, and the highest earning comedian in the history of entertainment. And so let me just go through those 3 little pieces of the puzzle, and then we can get into greater depth and questions. So the 18th century social scientist, he's an Italian by the name of Vilfredo Pareto, which you may disagree with some of the things I say today, but I think we can all agree that everybody's name sounds better in Italian. I mean, come on, Vilfredo Pareto. Because if he was an American, Willie Parrott, nobody's listening to him. But he was doing research, and he was looking at the distribution of wealth in Italy. And what he discovered was 80% of the wealth was held by 20% of the people. 20% of the people had 80% of the wealth. And once he started to see this ratio, this 80-20 ratio, he saw it everywhere. And we see it completely today. It is so widespread. I talk to especially sales executives, because they have access to numbers and they know exactly how their people are doing. And to a company, they will tell you 80% of their sales are made by 20% of their salespeople. And it doesn't matter the industry. If it's real estate, 80% of the new home listings will be done by 20% of the people. I've even talked to pastors who would tell you 80% of the contributions to the church are going to come from 20% of the congregation. And as I started looking at this, I was like, well, we're talking about people, and people are so unique and so individual. How is it possible that we fall so easily into one of these 2 categories, the high producing 20% or the high potential but lesser producing 80%? And so the first thing I did was I said, okay, well, what are the things, What are the things they have in common that we can eliminate that might be the deciding factor? And you think about yourself being the HR director of a company and you're hiring new salespeople. Well, you got to believe the educational level is going to be about the same. Uh, uh, Talent, skills, abilities are all going to get the same training. Intelligence is going to be relatively the same. They probably all have a certain baseline level of ambition. So if all those factors are equal, then what is the deciding factor? And the conclusion I came to was this: the thing that separates the 20% high performing 20% from the lesser producing 80% is this: that 20% does what needs to be done when it needs to be done on a relentlessly consistent basis. And the 80% know what needs to be done, but they don't do it, and they certainly don't do it consistently. And as we talk about this 80-20 thing, I want to get this right up front and very clear. There is no judgment here, because you may be watching this thinking, gosh, as he describes this, I think I might be in that 80%. Well, first of all, know this: I'm with you. I am in the 80%. Consistency has been the biggest challenge I've faced my entire life. I know the frustration that comes from when you make a promise to yourself and you find yourself unable to follow through on that. So what I'm telling you right up front, there's no shame, there's no blame, there's no talking down to anybody. And I'm going to make a case. Fact is, I'm getting ready to make the case right now that this is not this challenge with consistency is not a character flaw. It's not something that we're just weak or lazy. There's none of those shame-based judgments. The reality is we're literally wired differently. And so that's the second piece of this puzzle, which is a monster made out of marshmallows. I always think of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Monster in Ghostbusters. So back in the late 1960s, early 1970s, there was a researcher at Stanford. His name was Walter Mischel. And he did this study that famously became known as the marshmallow test. And so what he did is he rounded 300 5-year-olds, which, I'm sorry, right there, you should get the Nobel Prize just for that. Because I have a 9-year-old granddaughter, which is amazing because I have no children. That's a story. And if I babysit her for half a day, I have to be hospitalized. So the thought of rounding up 300 5-year-olds is just beyond the pale. But that's what they did. And they brought each child one by one into a room, set them down at a table. On the table was a marshmallow. The researcher said to the child, listen, I'm going to leave. I'm going to be gone about 15 minutes. When I come back, if that marshmallow is still there on the table when I come back, you get a second marshmallow. Little marshmallow, double or nothing. And I wish I could see faces. I love it. It's in a live audience because this is the question I always ask. What percentage of kids do you think eat the marshmallow? Oddly enough, 80%. I'm telling you, every question I ever ask is always 80-20 is always the answer. 80% of the kids eat the marshmallow. So think of this for yourself. Put yourself back in your little 5-year-old self. You're in that position. You're sitting at that table. You're looking at that marshmallow. What do you do? Because I know what I would do. There's no doubt. Before the researcher could have gotten out the statement, he would have said, okay, now I'm going to leave. I'm going to go. Wait. Because I would have had the marshmallow in my mouth. And, can I have another marshmallow? I would have eaten the marshmallow. I know I would have. And so this became the lesson from this was, 80% of kids are driven by the desire for instant gratification. 20% have the ability to delay gratification. That was kind of the extent of the life lesson taken from this. But it then became more interesting because about 10 years down the road, they realized they had contact information on all these kids. What if we were to follow up and see would there be different life experiences based on whether or not a child did or did not eat the marshmallow? And what they found was the 20% of the kids who did not eat the marshmallow in their teen years higher GPAs, higher SAT scores, and according to, they were judged to be more socially advanced, that's pretty significant. They did another follow-up when these test subjects are now in their latter 30s, early 40s. What they discovered is the 20% non-marshmallow eating kids, adults now, had higher professional attainment, higher educational. They much more educated. They earned more. They divorced less, and according to body mass index, they were actually healthier. I mean, it's so basically on every metric that's important in our lives, the 20% excelled. And it's funny because when I was working as a professional speaker, I would see people talk on this marshmallow test, and the information always stopped right there. The presentation stopped right there. And the life lesson we were to take was, well, you need to learn to delay gratification. And that's delayed gratification for our purposes is no different than consistency. It's the same muscle. And so it still comes back to, yes, that's great. How do I do that? And no one ever answered that question. So then we hit 2011. And now computing power and medical technology have reached a place where they could bring back those original test subjects. They could put them in a functional MRI. And a technician could look at the brain activity level in one of two areas of the brain and predict completely 100% whether or not that test subject did or did not eat the marshmallow 45 years prior. See, this isn't a shame-based issue for us that struggle with this. This is a hard wiring issue. We are hardwired at least by age 5 and probably before then to either be driven by instant gratification or delayed gratification. Instant gratification or delayed gratification, that is the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain, the executive functioning part of the brain that can look at an activity and project out, if this activity is repeated over and over and over again in time, what's going to be the result? And if that's a positive result, then the prefrontal cortex says, let's take that action every single day because that's going to get us where we want to go. There's a much more primal part of the brain called the ventral striatum, where people like, me function out of. It is driven by instant gratification. It makes its decisions not on what the iteration of an event's going to be long term, but on these three criteria. We call it the ESP filter. Is it easy? Is it safe? Is it pleasurable? And this served us really well for millennia. Easy was important when you were back in a million years ago and you were deciding, when you pursue food, if you expend more energy getting the food, then the food is going to get back to you. That is not a recipe for success. Safe, easy, safe, pleasurable is safe. Safe was, it's obvious. If you're the caveman that says, hey, a woolly mammoth, I wonder if he'll let me pet him, you are not going to pass on your genes. And finally, pleasurable goes directly to procreation. So these were three criteria that really served us well for millions of generations, but they don't necessarily serve us well now. And if we make these decisions, they drive instant gratification. So let's say, for instance, I want to lose weight. Awesome. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to eat better. And then a jerk comes into your office and goes, hey, I brought donuts for everybody. All right, now the prefrontal cortex of my brain says, no, we're not doing that. That's not going to take us where we want to go. But the ventral striatum says easy, safe, pleasurable. Easy? A donut, there's nothing easier than a donut. It's like I got a little handy carrying case that you put your fingers through. It's awesome. Safe? There are no sharp edges on a donut. Of course it's safe. Pleasurable? Have you had a donut? Of course it's pleasurable. So if you can tell me which area of the brain you're making your decision, I can tell you what your decision is going to be. And for most of us who are making our decisions back here in the ventral striatum, we make short-term decisions that we regret later, that we're like, I can't believe I decided to do that. And that's where all that shame and blame comes in. And it's not anything about who we are as a person. It doesn't reflect that. It just reflects literally what our wiring is. Now, if we stopped here, this would officially be the most depressing little presentation ever. So how do we get out of this? How do we beat this? So there's three options. Number one, and this is what basically the people said when they looked at the study that says you need to delay gratification, and that is delayed gratification. And so what they're asking you to do there is to brute force this. Basically, go against your nature and just force yourself to do something consistently. And this is kind of where what motivation does, right? And we can do that for a time, but can you do it for a long time? How long does motivation last? I can tell you the exact date. February 8th. That's how long it lasts. Most New Year's resolutions, virtually all New Year's resolutions, are done by February 8th. And I'll be honest, when I first heard that, I thought, February 8th? Hey, that's not bad. That's better than I usually do. So brute force you can do for a little bit, but consistency is a marathon. It's not a sprint, and brute force is a sprint. So that's out. Second option, and this is the one that's very popular. A lot of people choose this one. Quit. I said I wanted to lose weight. Yeah, I said I wanted to get that promotion. Yeah, I said I wanted to have better relationships. But you know what? I don't know. It's not happening. I put in some effort. This just isn't for me. I may come back to this later, but for right now, it's just not for me. Third option, and this is the one that we're going to spend time on today. What if there was a way where we didn't have to deny our nature? What if there was a way that we could actually lean in to our desire for instant gratification and use that to propel us towards what we want in the long term? And that takes us to Jerry Seinfeld, oddly enough. So it's been several years ago, I was reading an interview with Seinfeld, and he was talking about a young kid that came up to him and said, how can I become Jerry Seinfeld? And he said, well, okay, first of all, my goal was never to become the Jerry Seinfeld that you see today. He says, it was not about limos and Learjets. He said, I had one simple goal when I began my comedy career. And his goal, which this is, by the way, is in defiance of all traditional goal setting, and we can talk about that because it's what makes this work. His goal was to become a better comic. And so he said, okay, well, what can I do on a daily basis that would make me a better comic? And he decided that the most impactful activity you could have would be to write jokes. The more jokes you write, the better you get at it. The more jokes you have, that's the best thing you can do. So he decided, I'm going to write jokes. So he wrote jokes the first day, and he got a big calendar that he put on the wall, and he made an X on that date. Woo! Second day, wrote jokes, put an X on the calendar. Now, the genius of Seinfeld, the reason why Jerry Seinfeld got a check for $800 million when he sold the syndication rights to his sitcom was because he did not see two X's on a calendar. He saw two links of a chain. Day 3, and it never gets any harder than day 3. It never gets any harder than this. Day 3, he had one unbelievably simple goal. Don't break the chain. Don't break the chain. All the wealth and fame and fortune that has been downstream of beginning this don't break the chain, that is nothing more than the compound interest on his consistency. And as you listen to this, you're going, well, it can't. Could it possibly be that simple? I'm telling you, not only is it possible for it to be that simple, it has to be that simple. Remember what we're doing. We're appealing to the part of the brain that evaluates easy, safe, and pleasurable. We make it easy, we make it safe, and we make it pleasurable. There's nobody that's watching this that if there's an area of your life that that has been resistant to you having consistent progress in. There's nobody that can't use this. And I've got tons of case studies and examples, and we can love to explore that. So I want to invite our hosts back and see what areas that you guys would like to hear more about. We can dig into a little bit deeper. And if you have any questions, I am more than ready to see if I can't answer those.
Oh, we got questions.
Questions. We got questions.
There were so many things that you just shared there that backstage I was sitting there going, what? Oh my gosh. Well, I had never heard that they did this follow-up with the kids. I've heard about the marshmallow before,
Yep.
had no idea how brilliant that they did the follow-up, and fascinating what came out of it. So here's the first question that's popping into my brain today, George. Is everyone just a pure 80-20?
No, it's a great question. There are very few of us that are like 20% all the way across the board. I have a best friend who unfortunately is, and I don't like him for it. I don't care for him. And if he weren't my best friend, I would drop him like a rock. But he's good at everything, and he's consistent in everything, and he's a horrible person to be around. But it's rare. And the perfect example of this is is Oprah. Oprah, I mean, when it comes to business, 20%, oh my God, she's in the 0.002 top of the business world. But as we all know, as she's made us publicly aware of this, she's struggled with her health and her weight and her fitness. And it was funny when she decided she was going to be the spokesperson for Weight Watchers. Before that was announced, the first thing that she did was she bought Weight Watchers stock, because she knew that when that announcement came out, that stock was going to skyrocket. She made like $6 million on that purchase of stock. That's the business Oprah. Now, I don't know if there's anybody I haven't seen Oprah. I don't know how the health and fitness has worked out for her. That's still an open question. And when you think about it, is there anyone who has more resources to deal with their health than Oprah? I mean, she can have private chefs, and she can have personal trainers. She can have someone who follows her around 24 hours a day, just slapping food out of her mouth. And yet, that's a pretty good gig. And yet, she still faces this struggle. So it is very common for people to be extremely strong in one area and still have another area that's very resistant to them making change and progress in.
Well, the thing that occurs, I mean, and honestly, we have seen that in people who have very powerful positions, executives, whatever, that, there happen to be maybe relationship issues in their life.
Yep.
And I don't want to judge anybody, but I think if you think about this hard, you think you can see it. But I'm wondering what are leaders thinking out? What are the 20%ers thinking out there? Why should they care? I kind of have thought that through. Obviously, they're leading this 80%. So there's that. But they're already consistent. So, I mean, can you talk to us about that? Why should they care? And where's the message for them in this?
Well, I mean, the message is really important. Let me give kind of the metaphor of the way I see leaders in this, and this is something that's been this challenge of how to become consistent, which is just a variation of how do we live a better life. I mean, that's something that's been explored in art and in literature, and I think there's a great parallel in one of the masterpieces of art, and that is Warner Brothers cartoons. I know, hang with me. So I grew up as a kid, and I was an impoverished child because we could only watch cartoons for 4 hours a day on Saturday mornings. Cartoon Network, where are you? Come on. I mean, that basically meant I had 164 hours a week to kill.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was so awful at times. My mom would say, "Hey, go outside and play," and I'm like, "I don't even have a helmet." So, so I'm sorry, I'm stretching this out. I used to watch the Roadrunner and the Coyote. They were
Mhm.
my favorites. And if you're not familiar with Roadrunner Coyote, God love you. Do some work and figure it out because it's the best. And it was the eternal struggle of the Roadrunner chasing the Coyote, or the Coyote chasing the Roadrunner, never catching him, and then ultimately having a catastrophic end. And so the Roadrunner, there was always one section, one segment where the Roadrunner would be on a cliff top, and off in the distance is another cliff. And the Roadrunner, with nothing more than a cloud of dust and a beep beep, would streak, and he would be on the other cliff top and away. And the Coyote would be watching this, and he would say the phrase, he would think the phrase that has put more coyotes in the hospital than any other, and that is, well, if the Roadrunner can do it, I should be able to do it. And he would head into that gap, and then he would hit that place where his momentum would stop, and he would always turn towards the camera, and then fall to the chasm below. And it happened over and over and over and over and over again. And then finally, the Coyote thinks, well, Acme Company, hello. And he gets jetpacks and rocket skates, and all they do is propel him a little bit further into the gap, and then he falls harder. My point is this. If you're a leader, 20% of your team are going to be Roadrunners, and they're awesome. And to lead them is so simple. You just say, well, come over here, and they go, beep, beep, and they're there. Mm-hmm. But 80% of your team are Coyotes, and they struggle, and they're trying to do what you do. And I don't care how often a Coyote goes, meep, meep, he ain't making it across. He's not going to be able to use the same path. He's not going to be able to follow the same path and the same thing that you did as a leader. And the challenge for the leader who is a Roadrunner, and probably an exceptional Roadrunner, is that now you're not judged completely on your ability to get across that chasm. You're judged a great deal on your ability to get coyotes across that chasm. And the technique that you use to get across is not going to be the one that's going to be effective for them. And we see this. We see this all the time I had a chance, I've spoken, I don't know how many meetings I've spoken at, and you see people get up on stage, and the people on stage telling people how to succeed are always Roadrunners. They're always that top 20%. And the 20% in the audience that are the same as them go, yep, that's exactly how it works. And 80% of the people are going, I get what you're saying. I understand how you say meep, meep, and you end up on the other side. What I'm saying is I can't do it. And we know this never changes because the numbers never change. Mm. And so what consistency change says, look, instead of just plunging these people to their death repeatedly, why don't we try a different strategy instead of trying to make them leap this gorge that they're never going to make? Why don't we show them how to build a bridge? Literally, one step, one day at a time. The Coyotes are building from one side, and the Roadrunners are modeling the behavior and building from the other, and you meet in the middle, and now we can go across. So leaders should care about this because you're leading people who are not like you. And you have to understand that, and you have to understand the tools that will help them. It may look different than the tools you used, but your tools ain't working for them.
And I love that you talked about there's no shame in this. This is not a character flaw. I have never heard anybody talk on this subject before and say that. And I've been in conversations, I've worked at companies where they talk about the 80-20, and I have felt like it has been presented as, well, the 20%, those are the high performers, rah, rah, right.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah.
What's the process to access the consistency chain?
Well, I mean, there's let's say on a personal level, it's a little bit different corporate, but on a personal level, what you want to do is you want to figure out what's that area that you actually want to work on. Is it my health? Is it my relationships? Is it my career? And you nail down what area you want to focus on. And it's going to be an area generally that's been resistant to you changing. And then you want to establish what we call an ER direction. And I kind of alluded to this in the Seinfeld thing. He said he wanted to be a better comic. And that is just completely, it violates every goal setting thing that we've ever been taught. You know, it's not, you know, I remember when I heard SMART goals, I thought, oh, this is amazing. SMART goals, specific, measurable, assignable, R, never can remember, T, time-based. And, you know, I heard that and I thought, oh, yeah, that's the way to go. And this better comic, it's not specific, it's not measurable, it's not time-based, you know. So, but here's the reality. For people like me in the 80%, goals have never worked. And it makes sense that they wouldn't work, because what is a goal? A goal is nothing more than something I can't get now that I'm going to have to work at repeatedly in order to attain. Well, what is that? That's delayed gratification. And what have we established that I suck at? So goals have never worked for me. So a traditional goal, if you're going to say this ER direction, which I'm going to make the case for, is not a traditional goal, then you can say, great, because traditional goals haven't worked. So he just said he wanted to be a better comic. So so when I saw this, I'll give you an example. When I saw this, I decided, okay, this don't break the chain seems awful simple and stupid, but I've done a lot of things that are simple and stupid in my life. So what's one more? So I said, all right, I'm going to tackle an area of my life that I've never been consistent in, and that's working out. I said, I would love to be able to work out every day, 45 minutes to an hour in an activity that makes me sweat and raises my heart rate. That was my thing. And I said, okay. So my version of being a better comic was, I want to be stronger, I want to be fitter, I want to be healthier. Now, I did not set the SMART goal that I've done 50 times, saying I want to weigh 175 pounds on this date. I didn't do that. Stronger, fitter, healthier. Here's the advantage of this for people like me. And I'm talking, when I said we were going to lean into our desire for instant gratification. So when I would go to work out, I would come home, I could look in the mirror with complete integrity and complete joy and say, you know what, George? You worked out. You know what that means? You're a tiny bit fitter, a tiny bit stronger, a tiny bit healthier. See, I was not having to wait or delay that feeling of winning. I was leaning into my desire for instant gratification. I won the day. And that's all I cared about. And I put an X on the calendar. I put another link on the chain, and I can feel great about that. I'm not waiting. Now, we all know that if you keep up that activity long term, you're going to lose the weight. You're going to do what? You're going to get the promotion. You're going to have better relationships. But I don't care about that, because I'm not going for a destination nearly as much as I want to go in a direction. And that's this ER allows me to completely, honestly with myself, take a step in that direction and feel great about it.
It's just about today.
Yeah, just about today. I'm not
So
waiting to win. I'm just winning today.
So the ER is the better, healthier, stronger. It's those words. That's what you're saying. Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Yep. And then you find then the chain activity. The chain activity is what is like where Seinfeld said, what's the best activity I could do? I could write jokes. Okay. So then you find an activity that is going to take you in the direction that you want to go. And it was interesting. One of the guests you had, Dr. Luana, who's teaches at the Harvard Medical School. So I felt pretty good about her advice. And I asked her, I said, how do you help? Because she does cognitive behavioral therapy. I said, how do you help someone decide what that activity is going to be that they're going to engage in? And it was very interesting. She says, I will ask them what the activity they feel like that they could do. And because they want to impress her, they will always say, well, I think I could do 5 of these. And she'll go, that's fantastic. How about if you do 1? And they're like, well, I think I could do 5, but she just wants me to do 1. So what have we done? We've now made something easy. which is the key to getting the most important thing hurdle that you have to get over with in this part of the brain that evaluates on easy, safe, pleasurable is easy. If you don't get past easy, you're in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So she made the task easy. So if somebody says, hey, I want to advance in my career, and what I need to do is I need to make 5 cold calls every day. Great. Can you make 1? Let's make it easy. Because in the beginning, you're not building towards the goal nearly as much as you're building the muscle of consistency. And the beautiful thing is, once you build this muscle of consistency, it scales. It's very easy to go, well, that was easy calling 1 person. I think I could call 2. If you can call 2, you can call 3. And pretty soon, you build that consistency, builds that skill level. And so at some point, what would have appeared daunting and not easy now is, because you totally know, yeah, I can totally do that. That is easy.
So this is really building habits. And it's making, before you answer, I mean, that's right. Yes? Before you answer, I'm going to say something that has occurred to me. A family member of mine has been dealing with addiction and recovery. And it is so interesting how this corresponds to what they're teaching now that where brain science is where it is. They're teaching that, I always, being on the treadmill, they give them their daily activities. And it's not about, doing something right every day. It's about creating new neural pathways. So if they're consistent long enough with those very simple, which to me just seemed so ridiculously simple in many ways. But like you said, I mean, that's the whole point.
Right.
You're making the right correlation. Yes.
Yes,
does it make sense?
absolutely. Yeah. And we're building habits. True. But really below what we're doing, building habits, is what we're doing is creating new neural pathways.
Yeah.
And every time you go down this pathway, they talk about it, neurons that fire together, wire together. And so each repetition gradually increases the strength of that neural pathway. And eventually what happens, I want to circle back to your question a little bit, but eventually what happens is that neural pathway, we leave. It's like when I worked out for 531 straight days without missing a day, which is insane. What? I've never done anything that consistently in my life. But the only reason why, and if I'd started out said, I'm going to work out for 500 days, no, it would have never happened, because all I ever did was work out today. So at about the 6-month point, I had rewired my brain to the point where the question was no longer, am I going to work out? The question was, what workout am I going to do? And what I had done is I had shifted the decision-making from the ventral striatum, am I going to work out? Is it easy, safe, and pleasurable? To the prefrontal cortex. It said, what workout is going to be most effective for us today? So we're rewiring the brain. But the challenge with this is, and it's just a catch-22, how do you rewire a brain? Well, what that is repetition over time. Well, repetition over time is the definition of consistency. Yeah. And so if I'm trying to become more consistent, what you're asking me to do is to already possess the ability that I'm trying to acquire. If I could be consistent over time, if I could do repetitive efforts over time, then I would already be consistent. So that's the reason why we want to break this down and not look at the long term. We want to measure this differently, because the long-term measurements don't serve us well, because we can't see our progress. The distance is too far and our steps are too small, and it doesn't look like we're getting anywhere, and so it gets discouraging. So instead, what we want to do is we want to focus on literally just adding a link to the chain. And you can see, one of the proudest things I had in my office was these monthly calendars, month after month, link after link, without a link missing. And I was more proud of that than maybe anything I've ever done. So I had a graphic representation that made me feel good, and I could celebrate in, and it would bring me back the next day.
It's
That's
wonderful.
amazing. Well, that whole describing the definition of consistency, repetitions over time, it's like the catch-22. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy when, this is gonna, I'm gonna be
I
thinking
mean, we
about this.
literally, when we tell people to be consistent, we're literally asking them to do, just go ahead and display the behavior that you've already displayed that you don't have. And then not, that was the most frustrating thing. I'm a relatively smart guy. I would sit in those meetings and I would they give me the 10 steps. Absolutely. All those steps make sense. Absolutely. And then I would come around to Monday morning. Didn't seem easy. And the thing is, here's what happens, by the way, is people like me, I mean, I had different businesses that I was involved in that was some really successful, some not at all. And it always came down, was I taking the steps necessary to build that business on a consistent basis? The ones that I succeeded in, I was consistent, which, by the way, so it's like, because people ask me, I had a successful speaking career, and it was, my first iteration of my speaking career was a variation of comedy. I did 10 years of stand-up comedy, and then I did a program called Joe Malarkey, the worst motivational speaker in America, and it just blew up and took off. And people will say, well, how were you successful in that business and you struggle in others? Well, let's see. Writing comedy for me, easiest thing in the world. I have a harder time being serious than I do saying something funny. Safe. For whatever reason, I've always felt safe on stage. It's easier for me to talk to 1,000 people than it is to talk to one. Totally safe. Pleasurable. People would applaud when I came to work, and they would applaud when I left. So is it any wonder that I could be successful in that? No. It was that part of the brain says, yep, go, you're good to go, take action, go. But when I was involved in businesses that required me to cold call people or display selling skills that I didn't actually possess, easy? No. Safe? No, they might reject me. Pleasurable? Did you hear the first two? No. So what I would do, now I'm not going to say I'm not going to do this business, because I'm excited about this business. I think there's great opportunities. But let's be honest, Thursday's a terrible day to call people, because people are getting ready for the weekend. You don't want to be, they're trying to finish up their work. You don't want to be calling people on Tuesday. Well, let's call Thursday. We'll call Friday. Well, Friday rolls around. We can't call people on Friday. My God, they're getting out of the office early, and they're leaving for the weekend. You can't call people on Saturday. Obviously, Saturday's a family day. You can't call people on Saturday, Sunday. Well, Sunday's out. I mean, that's where Sunday's removed for, we save that for
Uses
church
excuses.
Yeah.
And what we never say no.
Mm-hmm.
We just say not now.
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep pushing back our opportunity one day at a time, until at some point in time, you're going to say, what was that thing that I used to do? I was thinking about doing something. I don't remember what it was. Yeah, I don't do that anymore.
Well, okay, so we get that, and you're making a lot of sense today, and it's
that's
fun.
A nice change of pace for me. All right,
it's also compelling. I mean, it's compelling. So what I want to know is, can you give us some tips, to help us and help others get started? Because we get the part about identifying our, maybe where we want to go, our direction, and maybe an activity. Give us some tips on how we get started.
Well, there are three things to consider when you're kind of designing that activity. The first is, the earlier you can do it in the day. And I know some activities are not going to lend themselves to this, but if it can, do it as soon as you possibly can in the day, for two reasons. Number one, you get it done when you have the most energy and the most will. So the likelihood of you getting it done early is better. And maybe most important, you get to celebrate it early, and you get to celebrate it all day. And so as you come into other things that you may be challenged with, you're like, you know what? I've already done my thing today that I said I was going to do. I bet I could do this too. So you get a spillover effect. So if you go early, you get to take advantage of that. So that's one. Two, I would suggest you have what I call a positive activity, and that is something that you do. So say you work out. Okay, well, that is something you do. Or you're going to make 3 calls. That is something you do. The negative activities are the things you say, I'm not going to do. I'm not going to smoke a cigarette today, or I'm not going to take a drink today, or I'm not going to do whatever it is today. Those are more challenging. Not the least of which is because you don't get to celebrate until 11:59:59. So it kind of hangs over your head the whole day. The only time I ever tell people that consider a negative is if you pair it with a positive. So if you pair it with and I don't even like to, want people to focus on one thing, but if you feel like you absolutely positively have a negative thing that you want to work on, pair it with a positive that you do early. So you get a win early that you get to ride, and then you get a win at the end. So you have a
Makes
little
sense.
success sandwich. So it completes your day. And the other thing, and this is super helpful, is support and accountability. Be willing to say to somebody, listen, I'm trying to make some change in my life, and let me tell you what I'm going to go about it. Is there anything that you could, anything you've wanted to do that you feel like this strategy might lend itself to? And let's stay in touch. Let's, and so it can be as simple as a text. Hey, and your activities don't have to be the same. Your areas don't have to be the same. Only the thing that is the same is your commitment to consistency on this. And it's just a simple text. Hey, I got mine done today. Very excited. How about you? How are you doing? And then maybe circle back when you haven't heard from somebody. Bob, just checking in, buddy. Want to make sure that, because a lot of times we don't do good because we forget to do good. And so these become those little pops during the day that remind us, oh yeah, I am in the game. This is a day. Okay, good. So support and accountability can help so much. We set up support and accountability groups. We call them little chain gangs, and 3 to 5 people. And what we saw were people that we interviewed them that had a baseline of consistency in a certain activity in the 5 to 10% range. And by having these little groups come together, we saw it immediately, not over the long term, but overnight, jump to an average of 82-83% consistency.
Wow.
So
I love the chain
dramatic. Yep.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Amazing.
His newsletter, I learned, is also called the Chain Letter.
Yep.
Oh.
There's more. What are the other ones? There's more.
The testimonials are the chain reactions.
Love it.
I think I'm out of chain puns now, but if anybody knows of any, drop those in. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
Crowdsource some of those.
Yeah.
As we start to get close to the hour here, can you give us some real world examples of how this works?
Yeah. So here's a perfect one. That we were working with a guy who was a mortgage broker, and he was a classic 80% mortgage broker. I mean, he was a solid performer, not a star, but he made whatever the minimum numbers were whenever he made it. So his company had invested in this technology that would allow him to take his iPad and record a short video, personalized video that he could send out to his previous clients, because that's where it's a referral-based business, and that's where he would generate referrals. So it may be something as simple as, hey, listen, I was driving by the house you bought. I hope you guys still love the house. If there's anything I can do for you, let me know. It'd be something as simple as that. And he was supposed to do 2 of these every day. And it was easy to do. And stuff that's easy to do is also easy not to do. And he was not doing it. So we worked with him, and we said, okay, so what would you, and he set up his chain activity. I wanted 2 of these a day. And it literally took him 5 to 10 minutes to do this. And he sent them out. And he did this for a solid month. And at the end of a month, nothing happened. Nothing. 0. And he's like, all right. So he did it for another month. He's now 60 days in. But at the end of 60 days, nothing. Not a thing. No, nothing. 90. Now 90, 90? Nothing.
Oh,
Well, how discouraging.
Wait, and that's the point.
Yeah.
Because at the end of 120 days, at the end of the fourth month, he had the biggest month he had in his 18-year career. And the reason why this is so important is exactly this. It is discouraging. And if you are tracking your results by external factors, everything in you tells you to quit. There's no point. I'm wasting my time. But he wasn't. He was tracking by his little links on a chain. And his links on a chain were telling him, I'm winning. I'm winning. I'm winning. Every day I'm doing what I said I'm going to do. Doesn't matter what the external results are, because those are always a lagging indicator. And the challenge for people like me is it is so easy to quit when we're in the process and we just don't see the point. And what consistency chain is it gives you a graphic representation. No. This is the way we're measuring, and doggone it if we aren't winning. So
And he was
stay in the
building
game.
relationships along the way, which in real estate, lots of sales processes
and it
is
just
what
takes
it's all about.
all that takes time. And the temptation is to quit before the fruits come in.
Yeah.
And this just keeps you in the game.
Yeah.
That's a good example.
Yeah. So good. George, thank you.
Yeah.
You bet. I loved it. Love talking with you guys.
Really good, fun, smart conversation. This is such an important concept, and you are a master at teaching these principles. So, to our audience, what we want to make sure that you leave this virtual event today understanding is that what you've experienced here today is a small portion of what George offers to corporate audiences worldwide. Real quick question, George, what does it mean to be a Hall of Fame speaker?
The National Speakers Association has a designation, and there's usually anywhere from 3 to 5 speakers every year that get inducted into the Hall of Fame. And basically it means that your peers, out of when I was there, the organization was about 2,500, 3,000 people. So to be one of the 5 selected that year by your peers to believe that you're one of the top 5 speakers in the association was a hugely significant honor. It was like a lifetime achievement award. And by the way, my best friend, who is the pure 20%er, he was in the same year, and that only diminished it a little bit for me.
Very good.
Oh, we should mention too that George's company, I mean, you can Google George Campbell certainly, but it's Consistency Chain, which people probably figured out by now, consistencychain.com. But we appreciate it, and I think we'd love to talk to you about it if you're interested more.
Yep.
You're in
Wonderful.
more.
Good. Well, again, thank you so much for being with us today. We will start to sign off here. So I'll leave you with a little bit of information about what is yet to come. I will encourage all of you not to break the chain in hanging out with us through Please Welcome either in studio or here virtually. We will be back in July with Vin Jang. Vin's keynote focuses on mastering our abilities to build deep connections through communication. And you know what? He's a magician. He's amazing. And something I learned from you, Kris, magicians are masterful communicators because
they really are.
The nature of how they interact with people. I never gave that any thought. So really excited to have him here with us in July. And you need to know about him. You will absolutely fall in love with him.
Especially because today, right now, with so much remote work, I mean, this is a major topic right now. Communication is very different than when we're all right next to each other in the office.
Right. Yes. And Vin is a wonderful virtual speaker. Yes. So again, as you are creating your events, as you're thinking about who is that right talent that we need to have either on our physical stage or on our virtual stage, some speakers are better than others in virtual. George, you're fabulous today. You are
going to be good in both places, which is
both places. Absolutely. Okay. And then in August, we'll be back in Studio 15 here at Heroic with international recording artist Peter Katz. incredible. You won't want to miss either one of these events. The exact July date, we're still finalizing that, but you can register for Peter Katz in August as of now. So that registration is open. From all of us at Heroic, thank you so much for being with us today. And do reach out if you have any questions about corporate event production or about finding the right talent for your next event. Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
See
everybody.
you next time.
Bye.
Since 2004, the team here at Heroic has been setting the stage for brands of all shapes and sizes, helping their stories shine through in-person, virtual, and hybrid events. From strategy to creative, technical design, production, and complete run of show. Please Welcome is an event series experience that you can enjoy either as part of our studio audience or online. This is our opportunity to open our stage and welcome to our stage thought leaders, experts, entertainers, all with something really impactful to share, and all with amazing abilities to move people to action. Now, you might be asking, why? Why did we create Please Welcome? Well, we've been in the event industry a long time, and we know that when you infuse the right talent into any brand experience, you now have an opportunity to transform that experience from usual to unique, from mundane to memorable. And boy, do we have memorable for you.